Okay, I've been asked to do a video on Joule creep and what a chrono does and why chronoing in joules is, to be honest, kind of pointless because it's the same thing as chronoing in velocity or, well, I hate saying chronoing in FPS, but same thing. All a chrono is a light gate. So your chrono, you will fire a BB in through the hole, and if you look into the chrono, you'll see two sets of slits, and it will have a laser and then another laser, and you fire the BB, it will go past the first laser, it will break the beam, it'll start the timer. It then goes past the second laser, breaks the beam again. The chrono will already know what that distance is, it'll been programmed into it. Breaking that beam and then breaking this beam will then tell it the time, and all it does is quite simply speed equals distance over time. Now ideally this would be in meters per second, but for some reason in Airsoft, probably because of the Americans, we use feet per second, which is a diabolically rubbish unit, but never mind. And you fire your BB through and it will literally, it's just a light gate. It quite literally just starts the timer, stops the timer, and the BB past the first gate, past the second light gate, and then it knows the distance. It just does speed equals distance divided by time. If you want to get your chrono to be reading in joules, all you do is tell it what the mass of the BB is. And then it is basically just a calculator. And it will just do kinetic energy equals a half times mass times by velocity squared. Velocity is just speed in a direction. So for the sake of this, it basically means the same thing. So kinetic energy equals a half times mass times the speed squared. You've already got the speed. It will have to convert it into meters per second with this because that'll have to be in kilograms so it can get a kinetic energy in joules. But it will basically just get this speed in meters per second, square it, times it by the mass that you've told it, and halve it, and that will then give you the kinetic energy. So if you've got a 0.2 gram BB with a velocity of 350 FPS, whatever the meters per second equivalent of that is, that will end up giving you a kinetic energy of 1.14 joules. Now, changing the mass of a chrono or the mass like unit on the converter, like the setting on the chrono, is literally completely pointless. All you're doing is then changing the setting for a new mass to make your energy be the same as 1.14 joules. So it has to stay under 1.14 joules. But if you've just got a spreadsheet, or if you've got a piece of paper on a laminated sheet or something in your sight, and your sight only shoots at, let's say, 350, if it doesn't, then you just have another column for the whatever other velocity you use. If you've got a sniper, you could have it set at 500, for instance, and you just have the values, and these are just the FPS values associated with 1.14 joules. Yeah, because 1.14 joules is 350 FPS on a 0.2. So if you're shooting 0.28, which is a fairly common weight of BB for use, it should be common mass of BB to use, then you just need to keep it under 296. That's it. So anybody going up to the chrono saying I'm shooting 0.28, when they fire through the chrono, it just has to be less than 296. If they're shooting 0.32s, it just has to be less than 277. That is it. And then it is always under 1.14 joules as well. Saying you have to change the settings on the chrono it's just wrong. You just don't have to do it. Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but it just wastes time. You're probably more likely to make a mistake by doing that. You just tell the person at the chrono hut what mass BB you've got. They look at what FPS is equivalent to 1.14 joules, and you just need to shoot underneath that. That's all you ever need to do. And a site that understands what they're doing should be doing that every single time. They shouldn't be messing around with the mass on the chrono. On the chrono, it just literally is doing the same thing. It's pointless. Joule creep is probably the most misunderstood thing, but it's not that difficult to think about, actually. The most important way, I think, is a site that just chronos on 0.2 gram BBs. For me, this is just dangerous, it's stupid, it's naive, it's just not understanding actually about the sport that you're trying to actually look at the safety for. So the reason is this: if you fire a 0.2 gram BB, so you've got a 0.2 gram BB that gets pushed down the barrel by air, which comes out of the cylinder, pushes the BB down the barrel, then the BB leaves that barrel with 350 FPS. You then go in chrono. You go through the chrono, you put a 0.2 gram BB in like they've told you to, or one of theirs, you fire it through the chrono. Chrono said it's 350 FPS and therefore it's 1.14 joules. fine, perfect. As long as you go out and shoot all day on 0.2 gram BBs, you're absolutely fine. But most people don't. There's a reason for that. 0.2 gram BBs just go all over the place. They've got the same amount of energy, but they will drop in velocity a lot faster because their mass is a lot smaller when they leave. That's another bit of physics on why heavier BBs are better, certainly outdoors. You then go and put a 0.32 gram BB in there. That 0.32 gram BB, because it is heavier, is going to have less acceleration, which means that it remains in the barrel for a longer period of time. Now, it will leave with a lower velocity than 300 FPS, but if it was still leaving at 1.14 joules, it should leave at 277 FPS. So what we had on here, yeah? Or it certainly has to be underneath that, yeah? But it won't. It will end up leaving at about 290. It won't drop by as much. Now, how much it actually ends up leaving at depends on loads of things like air seal, like the inner diameter of your barrel, the length of your barrel is quite a big one. A longer barrel is the heavier BB is going to spend even longer in the barrel. It's going to gain even more energy in the barrel because of the fact that it's actually had a force applied on it for even longer, and it will leave even faster maybe than the 290 FPS. There's quite a few things that would change it. But the simple fact is, if you are firing a 0.2 gram BB down the barrel and it leaves at 1.14 joules, yeah, which is 350 FPS. If you then fire a heavier BB, let's say you fire the 0.4 gram BB, that will not leave at 1.14 joules. That might leave at even, let's say, 1.3, 1.35 joules, 1.4 joules. It will leave with a lot more energy because its FPS does not drop by as much as it needs to keep the energy the same, because it's heavier, it's in the barrel for a longer period of time, it's being pushed by the air for a longer period of time, and it quite simply gains more energy by the time it leaves the barrel. Chronoing on 0.2 grams is just not sensible, it's dangerous, and it's pretty silly. Yeah, and sites just shouldn't do it. Absolutely none should do it. But that is what Joule creep is. Joule creep is a heavier BB being in the barrel for a longer period of time and gaining more energy by the time it leaves. Yes, it will leave slower, but it won't leave as slowly as it needs to keep the energy the same as the lighter BB left. And therefore, all sites should chrono in the mass of the BB. If you want to fix issues with people lying about mass, just have a tiny little top pan balance. And every time somebody comes up to the chrono hut, or every now and again, just pop a BB onto it and see what the mass of the BBs are. There's a couple of sites that do that. Really easy. Do that a few times with people's BBs and nobody will cheat. But that's what Joule creep is. And that's why you just don't need to chrono in joules. You might as well just chrono in FPS because they're equivalent anyway, as long as you know what the values are from the conversion chart.